And here we go right back into the wonderful world of CCP. And here we're going to be using IPS. First off, the IPS wizard. And we got to find the IPS wizard first. And as you can see, I've got configure here and no devices discovered here. And I've got a lot of grayed out stuff here. So there is a good chance that I have what? That I have not yet discovered that router. So let's click, and go forward. There's discovering. And hopefully in a moment we'll have a good message there. It's already found the host name and everything else, the IP address. So IP address it had, but the host name it wouldn't have. And written on it. I also like to show you these things in courses so you have a real world idea of how long they should take. Because so many times people click a button. There we go, I already discovered. People click a button and they just expect it to be working within 3 seconds, and it does not always work like that. CCP definitely doesn't. So let's go over to router, and let's see, we've got all kinds of stuff here. Router options and AAA, we don't want that. ACL, we don't want that. How about security all the way down here where you couldn't see it unless you scrolled down? And now we've got our audits and everything else here. We've got our firewalls. Intrusion prevention is what we want. And this is going to take a few seconds as well. So we will just take our time here. But again, don't forget to scroll down with that bar. It's so easy to do that with some of these GUIs. Because you're just looking at it, it's like, well, I don't have everything. Just scroll down. Especially in a test environment. There's a little extra stress going on. Just remain calm. You're ready to handle it, and they're not asking you anything you don't know. Except exactly how many seconds this is going to take. So, how about that local sports team? It does seem like so much longer when you're sitting here just staring at the button, waiting for it to come up. But again, I like to show you these things from scratch as much as I can, and not just, hey, it's already working, so let's start configuring. Because sometimes getting it to the point where you can configure the router or switch is actually the most interesting part, shall we say. And just as you're about to hit the pause button, there you go. So we've got create IPS, edit IPS, and we got something immediately there when I clicked on it. Can I get around that? No, I can't. Can I exit out? Okay. Security dashboard. And we've got IPS sensor. Now here, we've got our interfaces, we've got our IP address, it's already discovered that, inbound disable. We don't have any rules or anything like that at all. And just going back to this part, create IPS. The IPS rule configuration wizard configures IPS rules, but you knew that. On an interface, and also specifies the location of the signature definition file, because we have a couple of different places we could be getting that SDF from, and I definitely have some good real-world information for you on that as well. Because without our signature definitions, you know, we really don't have anything, right? It's like having an antivirus program with no definitions. You know, otherwise, that way you just got a program. So let's go ahead and launch the IPS rule wizard. And the first window we get says Cisco CP will open a subscription with the router to get the SDEE events. Okay, so we'll hit OK. And all that is, it's going to get regular updates. And here we go, the IPS policies wizard. That's all really a subscription is. So let's see. The IPS rule configuration wizard, and it's telling us the same thing it just told us before, except that you have to specify the direction of the traffic that should be scanned. If you don't want all traffic to be scanned, you should specify the interesting traffic to be scanned. This is a term you really don't hear much of anymore, interesting traffic. And I'm a little surprised it's in here. You don't really see it in their documentation that often, but we're just talking about the traffic we want to scan. Way back when ISDN was actually in use, and if you've never heard of that, don't worry about it. ISDN was basically one router placing a phone call to another. And when the line came up, data would be sent over the phone line. And this used to be a big part of the CCNA exam. I actually had it on my IE lab, so it was still around then. The key there was you had to have interesting traffic defined, and that was traffic that would bring up the phone line, because you didn't want your phone line up 24 hours a day because you got billed for it. So here, when we're talking about interesting traffic, we're talking about the traffic that we're actually interested in scanning, I guess is a good way to put it. So let's go ahead and click next here, and the first thing we're going to get faced with is to be asked which interfaces we're going to apply rules to, and whether the rules should be applied to inbound or outbound. So we'll just go with outbound on fast 00. Now, the SDF locations specify the locations from where the signature definition files should be loaded by the Cisco IOS IPS. If the Cisco IOS IPS fails to load the SDF from the first location, it tries the locations in order until it successfully loads the SDF file. Sounds a little familiar, right, with the router with startup files, that kind of thing, but here we're talking about signature files. And there's also a check mark here by default, use built-in signatures as backup. If the IPS doesn't find or fails to load the signatures from the locations you put up here, if any, it can use the built-in signatures to enable IPS. Now what you can do is click Add, and in a moment it's going to give us a little window. It's going to say, well, do you want to get the files from here, or do you want to get the files from here? Where are the signatures? Now these particular signatures, you have to have a service contract with Cisco to be able to get these particular signature files. If you are buying this equipment new from Cisco, then you are probably going to go ahead and do that, because that way you get automatic definition updates, that kind of thing, and that's very nice to have. Now you can see the two places where you can get the files. You can have it in Flash, and we've got something there. There's an XML file name on Flash. So you could say, hey, I'm getting them out of flash memory, and here's the name of the file. You can also say, here's the URL from which to load the files. Also, you've got an autosave option here, and you also have something you're going to be asked for if you're loading definitions directly from a file given to you by Cisco, and that's a key. It's not an honor system. It's actually a key that you'll have to enter, and your first thought might be, why in the world would I have to enter a key if I got the file from Cisco? Well, maybe you think you got it from Cisco, but maybe you really didn't. You know, because sometimes, and I hate to say such things, but sometimes files like that make their way out to the internet where people download them who haven't paid for them. I know, I'm shocked as well. And, you know, it happens. And the thing is, yes, you know, I'm not being Pollyanna about it here, because Cisco wants to get paid for the stuff, just like I like getting paid for my stuff. But the key there, no pun intended, is that when you have that key system built in, you know that you are getting a file of definitions from Cisco firsthand. They're authenticating it and authorizing it really at the same time. Because you could, you know, in today's world, somebody could cleverly just put together a batch that looks like signature definition files, but instead it's something that's going to help them hack your network. And it just gets out there and gets passed and say, you know, yeah, I got the latest SIG files, here they are. Well, if we just slap them on there without getting them authenticated by Cisco, but we think they're from Cisco, we're not going to know anything's wrong, you know, until it's too late. So just a little extra bonus knowledge there. You don't want to just pull any SDFs off the net and try to use them. It's not a good idea. Now I'm going to hit cancel here. I want you to know, though, the places where you could load those signature files from Cisco. Again, it's Flash or using a URL. Now, what we're going to do is use the built-in signatures as the backup, and those are going to be the only ones we use. So I want you to see those in action. So you can indeed just say, I'm going to use the backup files, and that's it. It's not something I would do in the real world. So let's click Next and wait. And here we go. So it's just telling us what commands are going to be applied. You know, built-in signature file location is blank because I didn't give it one, and built-in is enabled. So there I'm finishing. Here are the commands that are going to be delivered, and I'm also hoping to bring up the router. Yeah, let me shorten that down a little bit. So they're resizing here. I'm going to have this up so we can see exactly what happens when these signature files are written. Oh, I forgot that goes like 3 miles down or something. Okay, there we go. So let's go ahead and hit deliver. And the only thing we're doing is a couple of commands here. IPS notify SDEE. That has to be turned on in order for any of this really to work, period. Because you remember when I looked at the edit IPS window and it said, hey, you have to have SDEE enabled. That's something you got to have for this. So we've got that. It's given a generic name, SDM IPS rule. It's applying the rule to outbound traffic on 00. And here we go. 6 commands in all and already done. But again, when you're working in here, give it a minute because the device is being delivered. Let me, yeah, you can see all the strings here that were written because this was blank a few seconds ago. And you can see in the messages, configured to load built-in signatures. It's really easy to look at that and think it says bulletin. SDF load success. SDF loaded successfully from built-in. And then just some messages here, no new sig definitions for this engine. Here are a couple of strings, UDP and TCP. And that's really about it for that right now. But you can see some familiar topics here at the end of these strings: UDP, TCP, FTP, SMTP, and DNS. But again, you can see that at the very top here is what we're really interested in because we're interested in that load success. So let's go ahead and bring that down and then click on it and say OK. So we get a very quick window. You don't even get to click on that most of the time. It says, basically it's saying give IPS a minute to update itself here. So I'm going to click on it again. And what we're going to do here, it may come up while I'm talking, but what I'm going to do is go ahead and pause the recording in this particular video here. And on the next one, we'll start looking around at these different signatures, see what they're called, see what they do, and we'll edit a couple of them while we're at it. So I'll see you on the next vid.